After my father passed away, we decided to move my mom up to be with us in Seattle with my husband and her grandson. But that meant we needed to decide what to do with the house. And that was a very emotional decision because this was my childhood home. This was the place that my parents spent 60 happy years of marriage. So I worked with an agent and she discussed all of the options with us. There, of course, was the option of just selling it as is. And that did not feel like the right decision for a lot of reasons. It felt like financially it was a poor choice because an investor would be the one making the money off of a potential remodel. Also emotionally it didn't feel like the right choice because this was my childhood home and giving it into someone else's care was a very hard decision. So my agent introduced me to Lena and Andrew, and they were such a gift. They were so extraordinary to work with because they were very compassionate and kind. They were very good about explaining the process before we even started. They were amazing during the process at keeping me involved even though I was in another state. They made me feel like I was participating in reviving our old home. They talked me through potential design choices and let me be involved in a way that made me feel like I was doing justice to our home. And they were great about keeping me informed of budgetary concerns and details without making me feel overwhelmed by the process, which again was such a gift because this is something that I was concerned would be very overwhelming. And instead of being in a place where I felt like I was out of my depth, I felt like I was in a place where I was being cared for and that I was in good hands, which, given how much else was going on with the care of my mom and moving her to a new place, was incredible. And then, of course, there was a moment of coming back to the house after all the work was done. I am amazed how fast the process was. I am overwhelmed by the life that was brought back to this house. It feels like it's back to its true self. It is beautiful. All of the things that made it special were incorporated into a new design, and it has made the process of letting go so much easier, knowing that this house will pass on to a new family and that it was cared for by the people who were working on it, not only in the choices that they made, but in their attention to detail. It's extraordinary looking at some of the thought process behind the choices that they made. It's amazing. Those are things that I couldn't be happier with because it's choices that I feel honor the house and honor all of the love that was here when we lived here. So as hard as it is to sell our home and walk away from it, I am doing it with a lighter heart because I know Lena and Andrew took such good care of it and they honored the spirit of the house in all of the choices that they made and the care that they took in the renovation process. And I know that this home that my family spent 60 years in is going to go on to have a new life thanks to all of their hard work. And I feel incredibly lucky and blessed that I was introduced to them and that they had the care of revitalizing the heart of my home. One of the things that was incredibly helpful was the financial aspect because we had just moved my mother into an assisted living facility, which is very expensive. We also had to empty the house, move the furniture, so there was a lot of upfront costs for my family. And given that my mother is on a fixed income, that was really challenging for us. So when our real estate agent came to us and said they had this amazing team that they worked with that would fund everything through escrow so that we didn't have to pay up front for the renovations of the house. They also covered things like the moving expenses. That was extraordinary because not only did it mean that we were able to revitalize the house in the way that we wanted to, but it also meant that after the home was restored, we would be getting a significantly higher amount of money for the sale of the house rather than having to have it sold as is. And so it was financially an incredible opportunity from both perspectives. And that was something I was not expecting. And that was one of the biggest reasons that this was such an appealing process to go through, because in only 8 weeks, we went through the entire process of having the house emptied, moving everything, having the house restored, and getting it on the market. And that is incredible that we had that much more value infused into the house than we would have been if we hadn't had the opportunity to work with Lena and Andrew. Working with Integrity Homes was such a gift. They were the team I didn't know I needed, particularly given our family situation. And I have spoken to other people who are in a similar situation, and they have all said, where can I find a team like this? There is such a need for people who do this kind of work with the amount of care and attention to detail and professionalism as I've seen during this process. And I feel so lucky to have worked with them. And I think for anyone going through this kind of situation where they have aging parents, they have this kind of need to move elderly family members into a new situation and sell a beloved property, this was the ideal situation. And the process took so much stress off of my plate. It took such a weight off of my shoulders. And I am going to always be so grateful to them for everything that they have done for me and for my family.